decided to break away from the desire of one person to amend the Constitution. Actually, left MMD. I followed the life history very carefully when it was being read. He left MMD to fight for the maintenance of the one-term limit and therefore democracy, consequentially freedoms for the young.
There you are, President Nakachinda at the funeral and church service of the late Minister of Local Government, Ackson Sejani, spoke of the heroism of Ackson Sejani in defending democracy, the rule of law, and the two-term limit for president. He spoke like someone who also fights for democracy and the rule of law. But see where we are. See where the Patriotic Front is. Just pick up the conversation from there, SG.
Namashura Mwamba, I've been trying to be a little diplomatic because when you're talking to a diplomat, you are compelled to try and fit into the jacket. But I think I'm getting a little agitated. You bring Kabesha. Kabesha is a UPND cadre. Kabesha was even vying to stand under UPND in Stumbeko constituency. He applied, he didn't just succeed. And today is the Attorney General of the Republic of Zambia. Before we talk about the current case he's handling about ECL, this is a man who has signed the consent judgments over things that should never at any time grace the judicial corridors of our country. People who were on Nole, those who were arrested over the treason case with HH, today are boxing into rewards of millions of kwachas and so on because they are being rewarded politically, regardless of what the law says. So when you hear Kabesha speak, he's speaking politically, he's not speaking as a professional in terms of being a lawyer. When you talk of I was watching as you presented Nakachinda trying to tell a narrative about Sejani. Sejani is one of those who are singing tribal songs. In one vein, they want to present him that he was fighting against the third term, when in fact, the third term issue was just being opportunistically used. The real fight was a tribal fight because Mazoka found himself in a bad light with the MMD at the time. And the traditional leaders in Southern Province were gathered to go and pronounce that if Mazoka is expelled or the fact that he was expelled, therefore it meant that a particular region has been isolated politically. They didn't look at it from a personal perspective. And Sejani, it is on record, is one of those who proposed in later years that Nakachinda should take over the leadership of UPND because only a Tonga can become president. Katwamba notuyoaga hindwa more. Today to come and try and give us a narrative about Sejani that he was fighting for democracy and so on, among the people who planted the seed of tribalism in the Republic of Zambia in relation to UPND is that man, my uncle, called Sejani. So if we are moving forward, one of the things that have polarized our country under UPND and under Mr. Nakachinda is ethnic and tribal sentiments, which all of us are ending up suffering from. That's the situation that we are dealing with. So if you look at the state of the nation, as you had asked the question earlier, it's not just about issues to do with the family of the President Lungu, issues to do with the party that has been hijacked, and today we can have even a society misfit like, Robert Chavinga, being called president, not by anybody else but Nakachinda. Even assigning Robert Chavinga to undertake criminal activities in Zambia and in foreign lands, as reviewed by his own audio, which was leaked a few days ago. implicating Mr. Hakainde Hichilema and the UPND squarely. What was even more saddening is the fact that there was also an extension to one of the security wings, which is very sensitive, the one that has to do with the office of the president. That is the situation we are found in. So when Zambians are talking about our way towards 2026, they must be able to appreciate the magnitude of the rot that we are faced with. Ambassador, knowing you and your passion and patriotism for the country, you would not have been broadcasting in foreign lands. You are talking to a comrade who have spoken at personal level around our country and so on. I have more than 23 cases in court. I am faced with a conviction on my head, having exposed the fact that there was an orchestrated scheme to try and interfere with the judiciary. With the revelation not only of Levin Goma and the other young man at State House, Christopher Mundia and others, through the evidence we presented in court, today Chabinga has been able to vindicate me that the judiciary has not been spared. It was a subject of political manipulation so that people can be able to advance their political interest to stay in office and quiet the voice of the opposition, which is basically evident in our country. So when we are discussing all these things and you are showing me those videos, I'm wondering if we are really going to cure issues as we go towards 6, we must all be serious around what has invaded the country, the issues that are we are faced with, which are destroying the foundation that Kenneth Kaunda left us with, that Dr. Chiluba left us with or enhanced, that Mwanawasa attempted to also contribute and enhance, and other presidents. But under UPND and Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, we are fast going back to the ills that led us to fight for independence, fight for the liberties that we thought we could enjoy. But this time around, they are evading us because we are not understanding what we are dealing with. And I'm appealing to Zambians, where we are today, Ambassador Mwamba, we are faced with a dictator that needs to be stopped before the situation become bad to worst, to a point where correcting it should take many decades before things can normalize. That is what we're dealing with today. I am just saddened that today I can listen to a story talking about, not that it's personal, I respect my uncle. He was one of those who fought for multi-party democracy, but unfortunately, he fell at the first temptation to go tribal, and he even verbalized it openly, publicly, and that is Uncle Sejani. He's my uncle, but I can tell you that he failed on that score to even be on record today that he can propose a leader, not based on the qualities that that leader brings to the table, but propose that leader because he belongs to a particular tribe. That is what has damaged even Hakainde Hichilema's image, and we should not be shy to call it what it is.
SG, the matter you bring, the younger audience may not be aware, probably you have to recast it properly. In 2006, following the illness of the late President Anderson Mazoka, he died in South Africa. When he was put to rest, there was a succession dispute. From the funeral, I think there were heated emotions. Even to the run-up, Bob Chinga has done very well to have explained, because he was vice president and Sakiba Scotta was vice president, and I've been privileged to host them. On that particular matter, you remember even during the funeral, the hostility was so high that VJ, who was chief government spokesperson and minister of information, was beaten to pulp by the cadres. And VJ has never healed really from, for his, I think it's his left ear. But it was during the succession battle in the UPND where a few people, Rex Intana, Axon Sejani, Siache Madienku Kwandingande, Mwanajiti, were seen to have promoted a tribal agenda. And the newspapers are there, I can flash them here, that Elozi, the vice president at the time was Sakwiba Scotta, first vice president, and was vying for the position of president. And he was gathering serious momentum, but he was stopped by this group. Axon Sejani, may so rest in eternal peace, has marred his beautiful career as a parliamentarian and as a minister under Dr. Chilwa local government, and even the work he did in 2001. He has marred, we don't talk about the dead in bad light, but they've put him to rest, so I think we can talk about it. He has marred his career by those tribal remarks in 2006, when they were thrusting in, and nobody, people didn't know Hakainde Hichilema and the role he could have been playing in the background of either financing the party and his relationship with the UPND. So Rex Intala, Axon Sejani, Ngande Mwanajiti, and Siachema Dienkuku perpetrated this tribal agenda that Sakwiba, who was Lozi, couldn't be president, and they wanted the Tonga because that they presented was the wish, like it was the right of the party, like it was founded in Southern Province. Now, the tribal talks aside, the failure is on President Hakainde Hichilema to condemn those tribal remarks. He didn't condemn them in 2006. When he came into office, he rewarded Axon Sejani with a lofty position of local government service chairperson. Of course, Axon Sejani is entitled to a state funeral. It's not accorded, it's not a discretion, because he was minister. But there was a great attempt at that funeral to sanitize and correct history. And that's why I provoked you with that video.
Ambassador, I see people like Rari Moetwa and others today who, when we highlight the failure of Hakainde Hichilema, want to suggest that no, the reason for which people are condemning the governance and mismanagement of Hakainde Hichilema of this nation is because it's Tonga. First of all, Dimuk Tongo Kwene. And from the start, knowing Hakainde Hichilema as a person, I have opposed his leadership because I knew the damage was going to cause to this country from, first of all, the economic front, governance issues, including issues of unity. And when he was sworn in, just the display at Hero Stadium with that bodyguard from Beijing, people may not have paid attention. It spoke to the fact that we have a president who is not, willing to adhere to the norms and bureaucracy and practice of the office he was occupying. The way he received the instruments of power, the way he inspected the guard of honor. Hence my basically launching the binoculars to say we are in for drama, and it has been drama after drama. Today we're talking about who's not in state house but staying in community house, regardless of the dangers that whole process has posed to the community around where he's staying. People who have died, including police officers, and all that. Ambassador, today to even suggest that the failures of Hakainde Hichilema must now be construed or interpreted as those who are opposing him to be opposing him because he's a Tonga is basically a dangerous trend. By now, Rani Moetwa should have been arrested, looking at the current law, because he's basically being tribal in his assessment. Hakainde Hichilema, like you have quoted and said many times, has failed because as an individual who is a Zambian, who was seeking to serve as president, has been given an opportunity to serve as president, and he has failed. And he also speaks to us who are in opposition. What attitude should we have in dealing with this person who himself as a person, and also looking at the history of UPND and what we have discussed over Sajani, Natara, Madiankuk, and others, which speak to the history of this organization, who are tribal in their approach to these matters. We have to approach these matters from a nationalistic point of view. And that's how come, personally, I want to be many other in opposition have taken a stance that if we are going to march in unison towards 2026, we must never allow ethnic or tribal sentiments to ever invade our discourse. We must have a discourse that is talking from a point of patriotism, nationalism, as well as Pan-Africanism, so that we can be able to advance the interest of all Zambians, but also the interest of the continent. Because this crop of leaders that are in the category of Aka in the HNM are not enemies to their countries. They have also proven to be enemies to the continent. In the region, SADC, we have heard public pronouncement from government that they are making efforts to try and amend our relationship with Zimbabwe. When did we start having problems with Zimbabwe? Save for the fact that the Aka in the HNM has been able to mess up with our very long-standing good relationship with Zimbabwe, because we're Siamese twins, as it has been pronounced in time. We have been on the same page for many years, save for this time when Aka in the HNM decided as president and the UPND to entertain the idea of introducing an American military base, in the form of AFRICOM, which has become a threat in the region. It's not only Zimbabwe. If you come to Ska, it's a topical issue. You go to Mozambique, go to Botswana, though Botswana at some point also seemed to have been attaining a similar outfit and so on. So I think we need to be realistic in analyzing what we are dealing with. Misaka in the HNM is a danger not only to the present circumstances of our country, but is also a danger to the future if he continues to be in office. He is being judged as an incompetent Zambian person who sought for that office, and he has failed to manage himself, manage the presidents, manage the country, and it has been, whatever he has done has been to the detriment of the interests of this nation and the interests of the continent. And we are saying in 2026 he needs to leave. But the greatest indictment or responsibility or demand is on those of us who are in opposition, because he has done everything to try and prevent his exit, because he has also seen that the Zambians have resolved he must leave. He's tampering with ECZ. He's trying to change the rules of the electoral rules. He has appointed cadres in ECZ, from the CEO to the commission, so that he can be able to have an upper hand to manipulate elections. His pilot project is through the by-elections. Whether you talk of Kawambwa, you talk about Kwacha, you talk about Kabushi, you talk about Pambashe. He attempted, of course, in Petauke, we tried to retaliate and fight, but I can tell you it's a very expensive exercise. You have seen what he has done in Rumezi, what he's attempting to do in Fuwe. So this all thing put together only places a demand on all of us that I think we need to wake up to the reality of the monster we're faced with, so that we can prepare ourselves away from personal interests, political interests, but to save the interest of the majority Zambians, and the decisions, as well as whatever processes we undertake in terms of how we organize ourselves for 2026, must be able to answer to the demands that Zambian people are talking about.
Thank you, SG. Thank you. I was looking for that newspaper, Googled it quickly and put it there. So you will see the remarks by Rex Natala, and you see the remarks on top there by Sejani. So Sejani there said Southern Province won't be cowed into silence, over UPND succession. Then Rex Natala says only a Tonga must replace Mazoka. Now, those were dangerous remarks. My point is that President Nakachinda Hichilema has never bothered to condemn those remarks. He never distanced himself from the succession process that birthed him as president. He's never bothered to apologize. In fact, he rewarded Sejani. Sejani, who will be remembered for another matter, is the one that militarized and brought UPND into violence. You remember the Mampatizia formula? When there was a by-election in his constituency, he devised what he called the Mampatizia formula. So no government vehicle was allowed, no minister was allowed, they were stoned. It was one of the most violent and bloodiest by-election we've ever witnessed. It's called the Mampatizia formula, birthed by Axon Sejani. So there was a great attempt by President Nakachinda Hichilema to clean that. He hoped that we would forget. He hoped that the internet will not remember. He hoped that there will be no people like you and me who remembers the history.
This country was a one-party state for many years. And I see the faces in here. Many were young. They have no understanding what a one-party state meant or means. Maybe that's why the young generation must read a little bit so we can protect this democracy that we have. We had an election in 1988. The next election should have been 1993. I hope my figures are correct. I see Dr. Peter Machungwa there. I think my narration is correct. The next election, 5 years after, should have been 1993. But the people of Zambia decided that they were tired of a one-party state, where largely freedoms were taken away from them. At our time in university, as undergraduates, students, you never talk to your roommates, two of you. Those days, university roommates, rooms were occupied by 2 students. I never spoke to my roommate about politics because I wasn't sure whether he was what we called them as SBs. Because in 2 people, one of them possibly is an informer in a one-party state. So you never talk to your colleague in the roommate. Maybe after 2-3 years, then you gather courage to talk to your roommate about your freedoms. So a number of young men and women after 1998 election decided that enough was enough. And Sejan was one of those. As you heard from the life's history, he was still just a young professional. Only married in 1989. And 1990, Sejan left basically what you may call public office and joined politics together with.
My interest here, SG, was the definition of a one-party state. Clearly, President Nakachinda Hichilema understands what a one-party state. Tyranny, dictatorship, people can't speak, they fail to express themselves, they are held in suspicion, you don't even know who to trust. However, he doesn't seem to be aware that he has fostered the same conditions that existed during a one-party state.
He plays to the gallery like that. You are talking to a person who's a victim of Mr. Nakachinda's abuse and weaponization of the police. 2-3 weeks ago, I had an interview speaking to the funeral of President Edgar Lungu. And when President Lungu died, a few days later, we engaged into discussions with government through AIMBE. And in our discussion, arose the issue of the fact that the family was still considering issues to do with post-mortem and so on. And I happened to feature on one of the South African, television, platforms. and they were asking about the timing and the calendar. And then I spoke to the fact that, oh, the family has decided, they are still consulting, they think that some expert from Europe or the UK will come and undertake a postmortem and so on. Do you know what happened in Zambia? I was summoned, threatened to be arrested. Actually, I was warned and cautioned, which is the procedure in Zambia, a step before you are arrested. I have over 23 cases, all of them related to me challenging this government over their abuse of one institution or the other. I have gone to court to a point of me facing jail for challenging Mr. Hakainde Hichilema when there has been clear attempts to interfere with the judiciary and judges. And today I can authoritatively speak because Chavinga has been able to help us understand the mode of operation in UPND. Chavinga speaking to a cabinet minister and saying the only way we can resolve these matters is that a judge, Aningro Kudiamo, meaning that they need to give that judge some money so that they can be able to make a particular decision. And the cabinet minister was basically cooperating and even excited to hear that particular suggestion, which speaks to the fact that this is the mode of operation. When we challenge such things, it's not Chavinga that will be arrested. It will be Nakachinda that will be arrested. If we don't gather courage as a people and as Zambians to challenge these things and be able to take action against this, clear, calculated, orchestrated move towards eroding our democracy and reintroducing a one-party state under Mr. Hakainde, including the attempt of Bill 7. The attempt of Bill 7 to amend the Constitution is meant towards taking us to one-party state. But he plays a game where he tells you one story, but he does the opposite. The family to President Lungu believed the secretary to cabinet and the people he came with, and they committed themselves to certain conditions around the burial of President Edgar Chagalungu. I personally told Makebi and the family, the first lady, that this man you are trusting, he may not be able to implement those things that you're talking about. If you want to believe Hakainde Hichilema that he has done what he has committed, he must do it before you implement. If you implement, and after you have implemented or agreed to what he's suggesting, he will change on you. Before we could go far, the program which they announced, first of all, there was an issue of the body being kept at Chifwema from the airport. The government decided, as a way of tricking the family, they decided to close the road from Crossroads all the way to Chifwema, suggesting that they are doing repairs. It was the first sign. Next thing, the whole program that they announced also spoke to the fact that this funeral will actually be presided over by Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. There were even threats from security wings that when the body lands in Zambia, the security wings will take over, nobody will have any say. If PF decides to do anything, they'll be dealt with. Those sentiments came, only speaking contrary to what the government was committing through Secretary to Cabinet and the delegation he was leading in South Africa for negotiations. That is the kind of leadership we have in Zambia. Now, why are we describing and exposing the UPND and Mr. Hakainde Hichilema in this fashion? Because many times we are indicted and suggested that we only condemn, we don't have solutions. First of all is that Zambians must understand the problem at hand so that they can walk with us towards the solutions that needs to be pursued for this country to be normalized. If we don't describe the problem or don't discuss the problem at hand and all of us understand it, it will be difficult for us to prescribe the medicine or the solution for the problems we are faced with. In this case,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Hakainde
Steve.
Hichilema,
Quickly, let's
who
go
is
to
he?
the state
Yeah.
of the PF. Where is the PF right now? We were greeted with a good announcement that matters had been settled. We saw Honorable Miles Sampa, Honorable Miles Wadia Sampa, graced with a good picture with the late president. Further, we saw you appointed him as a leader of the opposition in parliament. Things were patched up. And you incorporated some of his members into the Central Committee. Matters were resolved. Consent judgment was agreed upon and deposited in court. It's been 5 months. Where are we with the PF? And then speak to the issue of Tonse before we go to the proposed solution for the opposition. Then we open phone lines.
Zambia, we run a judicial system which is an adversarial system, meaning that the court is moved by parties. The court doesn't move itself. It's different from South Africa, it's different from other jurisdictions that run a different type of judicial system. So to that effect, the matters, when we say adversarial, it means that people have to differ, and anyone who feels aggrieved enough to a point where they need a third party to mediate or to decide who is right or wrong in the matter will move to now what is provided called the court or the judiciary to come and be able to resolve that dispute. So in this case, we had a dispute in PF. One of our members, in the name of Umao Sampa, did something that all of us collectively did not agree with. And he attempted to impose himself as a leader. At least from my interaction and negotiations and discussion we had, he himself has admitted that when he was undertaking those activities, he was basically just being adventurous, thinking that he was being shortchanged, especially that to his activity he had been suspended. He thought that there was a move to disqualify him because he had expressed himself to run for presidency. Not knowing that that move would excite the UPND, and they took advantage of it. They offered him security and all those things that happened, which are in public domain. In our engagement, he himself said, I've come to realize that what I've done does not just injure PF, it also, by extension, injures the functionality of our democracy. And therefore, colleagues, I am retreating to make amends. We reconciled, and our reconciliation led to a consent judgment, meaning that the two parties, including us who went to court to complain over the actions of Mao Sampa, and Mao Sampa himself, went to court and said we have reconciled. And we have agreed as follows. In an adversarial system, the court has no choice where two parties have agreed, but to sign and say, go and have peace. Strangely, even when we have been able to present a consent judgment in court, up to today that matter has not been resolved. It speaks only to one fact. The same way they use fraudulent means to change office bearers at registrar. Ambassador, you are aware that when Mao Sampa went and had what he called a conference, which is basically a sham conference, less than 250 people gathered at Mulungushi, when the electoral college for PF, if we go by the provision of the Constitution, is slightly over 6,000 delegates that are supposed to go to a conference. He had less than 200. And Mrs. Mende, Tandiwe Mende, who was the registrar of society at the time, said she, being the custodian of political party constitutions, she has seen that that activity does not qualify to even be called a conference, and therefore she cannot effect changes in terms of office bearers. What followed? She was brutally, removed from her office, and they brought a UPND cadre to act in her position, and they fraudulent change office bearers. And that person even went further to change office bearers when Mao Sampa realized that he had done something wrong and he wanted to make amends. they went and tried to impose Chavinga as leader of the opposition. Now, what Chavinga has said now, and what they have done and demonstrated in time past, should worry every well-meaning Zambian. That if Pitamo Vena Zambia, it's not child play. This is pure criminal activities that are embedded and undertaken within the government system, okayed and blessed by the highest office of the land. That is a symptom of a very dangerous situation that we're dealing with. So to try and be casual about it and look like this is just a political game and so on, we are being irresponsible while the country is being destroyed. And that's how come we are all, rallying everybody and calling upon all Zambians, let's interrogate what's going on and be patriotic enough and courageous enough to challenge the status quo so that we can be able to find solutions. Ambassador, effort to create a government in Onshita, we have more or less a resemblance of a mafia assembly of colleagues who have taken over the reins of power, and they are using their mafia tricks to perpetuate their stay for their benefit. Because when you look at the economic side of things which the benefit they have gotten at a detriment of ordinary Zambians, you can never imagine that a man with a conscience, a woman with a conscience would even go to sleep and find sleep when the money that has been externalized, the amounts that have been mentioned, they could actually, happen under their watch without any of them resigning. And look at the people who have been protected. In a normal circumstance, Ambassador, Masebo would not have been in government today. Under normal circumstance, this guy called Kapala would not have been in government today. Under normal circumstances, fellow who is now energy minister would not have been in government today. And I can go on and on. Most of the ministers today under Hakainde Hichilema would not have been in government today. Even Mr. Hakainde Hichilema would have, on mono grounds, resigned already by today, if these are people who look at the interest of the nation to be P1 or priority number one. But because they have come more or less like it's a mafia regime, they are actually, after praying to the gallery, propaganda, even refusing facts that are presented to them, they go in their corner and actually give each other high five, celebrating that we have been able to sort them out. Hence their mantra is Mingarato. They are not only doing Mingarato to PF, they are doing Mingarato to all Zambians. And it's important for Zambians to wake up that what we are faced with is a dangerous regime that needs to be stopped in 2026 at all costs. Therefore, all of us who are politically active in Zambia today must rise above personal interests, partisan interests, and begin to advance the interest of this nation, especially the ordinary Zambians, so that we can find a solution as we go towards 2026.
SG, you are right. The happenings at the Anti-Corruption Commission are very worrying. A new board led by retired Supreme Court Judge Evans Amaundu was appointed. He himself, whose corruption allegations have not been cleared, they were leveled against him at the JCC, and they were reported to an institution in our heads. And a former UPND aspirant is now the Director General at the SEC. But what has happened is the acting Director General at the time, who was a Deputy Director General, Monica Mwansa Chipanta of Information and Media, was under criminal investigation. People have removed her. They've not only removed her, they've removed the Deputy Director General. They've removed the senior investigation officers, Raymond Chibonda, Friday Tembo, Milton Siakavea, and another set of 12. There is over 17 people that have been forced either to be removed, retired, or just fired. There has been a strong purge to the people that exposed this corruption. I think they thought that because they were fighting the old corruption of the PF, that they also could fight a new corruption. So we need to worry. And then you have a Director General at the DEC who says he can't name the ministers that are under investigations. This is in light of the report that was, pushed by the United States. And, Pricewaterhouse did that report. They've not surrendered it to Parliament. They have not surrendered it to the public. They've given it to law enforcement agencies. It's difficult for our people to have faith because the people that are handling this matter, like the DEC, Nelson Banda says, we cannot disclose by showing like there's a cover-up. Clearly, there's no fight against corruption. Answer that question and maybe answer around Tonse, then we open phone lines.
Basically, you have summed it up. The rate at which people are resigning, and also the deliberate effort to purge SEC. Those who are resigning are saying they don't want to have their career tarnished because what is happening, is unprecedented. Basically, they are tools to advance political interests other than being professional, whether investigating crimes and so on. Ambassador, I took keen interest in a matter that involved Mr. Stadimwari, who was defense, who was PS under defense. And I would go and attend the cases and so on. When I followed through, because first of all, that cases was a government-to-government arrangement, in the sense that the government of Israel decided to partner with the government of Zambia and provided certain amenities which I can discuss on this forum. When we went to court, witnesses, and they were refusing to testify. They said, no, I'm under oath, I can't speak. Because when I look at the details of this, there's nothing that speaks to crime. And therefore, to ask me to speak to those, what followed is that just because this gentleman was to be used as a pawn, there was corruption in PF, there were instructions that can you enter no liberty arrest. These matters have been discontinued. That's what happened, whether it was an issue to do with Mr. Power and others. When you look at the conviction of certain people that are in court today, the law that they applied to have them convicted basically shifted the burden of proof from the prosecution to the defendant. It's like me saying, oh, the tie that you are wearing, I like it, but I think you can't afford it. And therefore, I go and report you to the police, they arrest you, then you have to come and prove cage or anything to the effect that where you worked, there was money that went missing. But just because out of envy or whatever, I suggest that your tie could have been a proceed of crime. That's what people like Bowman and others are suffering and are going to jail for. What is troubling even for those people at SEC? It is a well politically motivated, state to fight the opposition and destroy those that are seen to be politically potent to make the opposition thrive and remain strong.
Yes, just a quick one. The President Edgar Lungu was very instrumental in putting the opposition together. He began to participate in what resulted into the United Kwacha Alliance. There was